Welcome to the exciting world of international trade, folks. It's a wild ride of paperwork, regulations, and enough acronyms to make your head spin. But don't worry, tonight on Last Week Tonight, we're tackling a particularly baffling beast-routed export transactions. Now, you might be thinking, John, I buy my underpants domestically and haven't exported a thing in my life. And to that I say, fair enough. But understanding this stuff matters because it impacts everything from the price of your morning coffee to the availability of life-saving medicine. So buckle up as we delve into the fascinating world of USPPIs, FPPIs, and the often confusing rules of routed exports. Trust me, it's way more interesting than it sounds, or at least I'll try to make it that way. Let's start with the basics, shall we? In every export transaction, there's something called a USPPI, the US Principal Party in Interest. Think of them as the head honcho, the big cheese, the one ultimately responsible for the goods being exported. They're like the Oprah Winfrey of this export operation. They make the big decisions. Then you've got your FPPI, the Foreign Principal Party in Interest, aka the international player. This is the person or company buying the goods from the USPPI. They're like the eager audience member shouting, pick me to Oprah. Now, in a simple world, Oprah would just hand the goods directly to the audience member and everyone would go home happy. But this is international trade, folks, and things are never that simple. Sometimes there's a middleman involved, a third party who helps get the goods from Oprah to the eager audience member. This, my friends, is where routed export transactions come in. In a routed export transaction, the goods don't go directly from the USPPI to the FPPI. Instead, they take a little detour through this middleman, known as the router. The router could be a freight forwarder, an export trading company, or even just another company acting as an intermediary. Now here's where things get a bit tricky. Even though the goods are going through a router, the USPPI is still ultimately responsible for filing something called the Electronic Export Information, EEI. Think of the EEI as a little note to the government saying, hey, we're sending these goods out of the country. Section 4. A slice of pizza, understanding routed exports. Let's say you're a pizza restaurant owner in Chicago. You're the USPPI. You make a deal to sell 1,000 frozen pizzas to a hungry customer in Japan. That's your FPPI. Instead of shipping the pizzas directly to Japan, you work with a shipping company in New York, the router, to handle the logistics. The shipping company receives your pizzas, slaps on some shipping labels, and sends them on their merry way across the Pacific. Even though the pizzas pass through New York, you, the pizza-making USPPI, are still responsible for filing the EEI. You're the one sending the pizzas overseas, after all, even if you're not physically putting them on the boat yourself. Section 5. The importance of filing correctly, avoiding penalties. Now, you might be wondering why we're making such a big deal about this whole EEI filing thing. Well, my friends, it all comes down to compliance. The government wants to know what's leaving the country, and they've got rules about how you tell them. If you're the USPPI and you don't file your EEI correctly, or worse, you don't file it at all, you could be looking at some hefty penalties. We're talking fines, shipping delays, and in some cases, even criminal charges. Not exactly the kind of toppings you want on your metaphorical pizza, right? Section 6, conclusion. Exporting made easy. So there you have it, folks. Routed export transactions in a nutshell. It's all about understanding who's who in this global trade game and making sure the right paperwork gets filed. Remember, even if you're using a router to get your goods from point A to point B, the USPPI is ultimately responsible for filing the EEI. Get it right and you're golden. Get it wrong, and you could be facing some seriously unsavory consequences. The world of international trade may seem complicated, but with a little bit of knowledge and a healthy dose of attention to detail, you too can navigate the exciting world of USPPIs, FPPIs, and yes, even routed export transactions. And that's our show. We'll be right back after these messages.